Meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday. I remember that specifically because Tuesdays were the day I used to volunteer at the food pantry over on Clement Street, and I had to call and tell them I wouldn't be coming in. The woman who answered said, "No problem, Evelyn. We'll see you next week." I hung up and thought, I don't know what next week looks like yet. My son-in-law picked me up. Not out of kindness, I want to be clear about that. He picked me up because my daughter Maxine had insisted, and Maxine always got what she wanted from him. He didn't speak the whole drive there, kept his eyes on the road, both hands on the wheel, jaw set like he was bracing for something. I sat in the back seat with my purse on my lap and watched San Francisco slide past the window, all gray and cool the way it gets in October, and I thought about the last time I'd been in the same room as a lawyer who was reading something important aloud. That had been 31 years ago. Different lawyer, different city, different life entirely. The firm was on the 14th floor of a building in the financial district. Glass and steel, the kind of place that announces before you even walk in that the people inside have more money than you will ever need to worry about. A young woman at the front desk offered us water or coffee. My son-in-law said no for both of us without asking me. I said, "Yes, please, coffee, cream, no sugar." He looked at me like I'd done something deliberately difficult. Maxine was already there when we walked in. She was standing near the window, arms crossed, wearing the black blazer she always put on when she meant business. She was 53 years old, and she looked, in that moment, exactly like her father, the same way of holding herself like the room owed her something. I noticed it, and then I looked away from it, the way you look away from things that hurt in a low, familiar way. She didn't hug me, she nodded, which was what she'd been doing instead of hugging me for the past 4 years. "Mother," she said. "Maxine," I said. I took a seat near the door. She took one at the head of the table, near the lawyer's chair. That told me everything I needed to know about how she expected the morning to go. The lawyer's name was Mr. Ashworth. Late 50s, silver-haired, the measured calm of a man who had sat in rooms like this one many, many times, and watched families discover who they actually were when money entered the picture. He came in carrying a leather portfolio, set it on the table, and shook hands with everyone. His handshake with me was the same as with Maxine. I noticed that too. "Thank you all for being here," he said. "I know this is a difficult time." My ex-husband Robert had died 11 days earlier. Cardiac arrest, alone in the study of the house in Marin he bought after we divorced. He was 78. We had been divorced for 26 years. In those 26 years, we had spoken maybe a dozen times, mostly about Maxine, and the last time was at her wedding. A conversation so careful and polite it felt like we were both reading from scripts. I had not expected to be in this room. I want to say that plainly. When Ashworth's office called and said my presence had been requested at the reading of Robert Haley's will, I sat down at my kitchen table and stared at the phone for a long time before I called my sister back in Ohio just to hear a voice I trusted. Maxine had called me the same evening. "I'm sure it's nothing," she said. "Probably some small thing. A piece of furniture, maybe. He probably felt guilty." She didn't say guilty about what. She didn't have to. We both knew the shape of the thing between us, even if we never said it out loud. "I'll be there," I said. "Obviously don't expect anything," she said. "He made that clear to me already. You're aware of how things stood." I was aware. Of course I was aware. I had been aware of how things stood for 31 years. I need to go back. I know that. You can't understand any of this without going back. Robert and I married young. I was 24, he was 27, and we were the kind of people who believed that love was enough to build a life on. In the beginning, it was. We had 12 years that I still think of as genuinely good ones. Maxine was born. We bought a house in the Sunset District. Small, but ours. Robert was working his way up at a commercial real estate firm, and I was teaching second grade, and on Sunday mornings we made pancakes and read the paper. And it was ordinary in the way that ordinary can be, for a while. Beautiful. Then, Robert's business partner, a man named Douglas, got caught doing something he shouldn't have been doing. Falsifying documents. inflating property valuations to secure loans the projects didn't qualify for. Federal territory. The kind of thing that doesn't just end careers, it ends freedom. Robert came home one night and sat across from me at the kitchen table and told me that Douglas had been doing it for 3 years, and that some of those transactions had gone through accounts Robert had signed off on, and that even though Robert hadn't known, and I believed him, I want to say that clearly, I believed him. It didn't matter what he'd known. What mattered was what the documents showed. He was going to be charged. The lawyer said the evidence against him specifically was thin, but not nothing. The evidence against Douglas was overwhelming. Douglas was looking at 8 to 12 years. Robert was looking at best case 18 months, possibly less with cooperation. I remember sitting very still while he said all of this. I remember the kitchen light humming. I remember Maxine's drawing stuck to the refrigerator with fruit-shaped magnets, a banana, a strawberry, a bunch of purple grapes. "There's another option," Robert said. I looked at him. Douglas's lawyer approached mine. If someone were to take the plea, a lesser charge, document irregularities, not the fraud itself, and Douglas cooperated fully with the government on the bigger case, the prosecutors would be satisfied. The sentence would be lighter. 18 months, probably 12, was good behavior. "Someone," I said. He didn't answer. "You mean me," I said. He was quiet for a long time. The refrigerator hummed. The strawberry magnet had a little green leaf at the top. "The prosecutors don't have enough to charge you with anything," he said finally. "But if you came forward and said you'd been the one handling the accounts, that you'd made the irregularities yourself without fully understanding the implications." "Robert, it would hold up. Evelyn, you were listed as a co-signatory on 2 of the accounts. It would hold up. I want to tell you that I said no immediately. I want to tell you I stood up from that table and told him what he was asking was monstrous and walked out of the room. That would be a better story. That would make me a different kind of woman. What actually happened is that I thought about Maxine. She was 9 years old. I thought about what it would mean for her to have a father in federal prison. I thought about what it would do to her at 9, at 10, at 12. I thought about the kind of man Robert was underneath this terrible thing he was asking. And I thought about the 12 good years before the kitchen table conversation, the pancakes, the paper, the ordinary beautiful Sundays. And I thought 12 months, maybe less. It's 1 year. I took the plea. The charge was document irregularities, not fraud, not conspiracy. The kind of thing that, the lawyer explained, would likely result in probation and a fine rather than incarceration, given that I had no prior record and the government was satisfied with Douglas's cooperation. He was right about that. I served no prison time. I paid a fine, $14,000, which Robert gave me in cash, money I've always believed came from Douglas. I lost my teaching license. The state of California does not permit convicted felons, even misdemeanor-level financial crimes, to hold a teaching credential. I was 35 years old, and I could no longer do the only professional thing I had ever loved. I told no one the truth. Not my sister. Not my mother, who was still alive then. Not Maxine, obviously. She was 9, and then she was 12, and then she was 17, and by then, the story had calcified into something I didn't know how to reopen. Robert and I divorced 4 years after the plea. The marriage didn't survive what had happened to it. I understand that now in a way I couldn't then. Something had shifted in how I saw him, and something had shifted in how he saw me, and we both knew it, and neither of us could fix it. The divorce was civil. He paid alimony for 3 years. We agreed on joint custody of Maxine, though she chose to live primarily with him by the time she was 16. By then, she knew some version of the story, not the truth. Robert's version, that her mother had made financial mistakes that cost the family, that her mother had embarrassed them, that her mother, frankly, wasn't entirely reliable when it came to important things. Maxine was 22 when she stopped calling me regularly. 26 when she told me, during an argument I no longer remember the specifics of, that she had always known something was off about me. 31 when she told me she didn't understand how a mother could do what I had done to a family. I never told her. Even then, I never told her. Robert's company eventually recovered. He started a new firm, a smaller one, and over the next 2.5 decades built it into something substantial. Commercial properties across the Bay Area, some holdings in Portland and Seattle, a development in Phoenix that apparently did very well. By the time he died, his estate was worth, according to the documents Ashworth now held in his leather portfolio, approximately $240 million. I was 62 years old, living in a one-bedroom apartment in the outer Richmond, doing bookkeeping for 3 small businesses and tutoring on weekends because I still couldn't teach in a classroom. Ashworth cleared his throat and opened the portfolio. Maxine sat up straighter, her husband, beside her, clicked his pen once and then held it still. I wrapped both hands around my coffee cup. "I'll begin with the general bequests," Ashworth said, and then he went through them. A donation to a land conservation trust Robert had supported for years, a bequest to his alma mater, specific sums to 2 longtime employees of the firm. Maxine's expression didn't change. She was waiting. Then Ashworth said, "To my daughter, Maxine Louise Haley Prescott, I leave the sum of $1 as an acknowledgement of our relationship and our years together." The room went very quiet. Maxine's face didn't move for a moment. Then it did. A kind of slow rearrangement, like watching ice shift. "What?" she said. Not a question, just the word. $1, Ashworth repeated gently, "as written." "That's not." She looked at her husband. He had stopped clicking his pen. "That has to be an error." "It is not an error, Miss Haley Prescott. He told me." She stopped, pressed her lips together, started again. "We spoke about this recently. He told me that his wishes were—" "I understand this may be surprising," Ashworth said. He had the practiced steadiness of someone who had delivered surprises in this room before and knew how they landed. "If you'll allow me to continue." Maxine sat back. Her husband put his hand on her arm. She didn't look at him. Ashworth turned a page. "To my former wife, Evelyn Ruth Haley," he read, "I leave the entirety of the remainder of my estate, including all real property, all financial holdings, all business interests, and all assets not otherwise specified in this document, to be held and managed as she sees fit." I didn't move. I heard Maxine make a sound, not quite a word, something before words. "In addition," Ashworth continued, and his voice had changed slightly, taken on a different quality, slower and more deliberate, "I have asked Mr. Ashworth to read the following letter aloud, which I composed in the presence of 2 witnesses on September the 4th of this year." He set the portfolio down and picked up a separate envelope. He opened it carefully, unfolded several pages, and began to read. "Evelyn, I have written this letter 11 times over the past 3 years. This is the version I was finally able to finish. In 1993, I asked you to do something that no person should ever ask another person. I asked you to stand in for me in a legal proceeding. I told myself at the time that I was protecting our family. I told myself you understood the risk and accepted it freely. I told myself a great many things over the following decades, because the alternative, accepting what I had actually done, was not something I was capable of for a very long time. You lost your teaching license. I knew how much that meant to you. I knew it the day it happened, and I knew it every year after. I told myself that alimony made up for some of it. It did not. I told Maxine a version of events that protected me. I want to name that plainly. I allowed her to believe you had acted wrongly, out of carelessness or selfishness, because that version made me the reasonable one, the stable one, the parent she should trust. I am ashamed of this, more than I am ashamed of anything else. You never corrected the record. Not once in 31 years. Not even when Maxine was cruel to you. Not even when she pulled away. I don't know if you did it out of love for her or love for me or some stubbornness of your own that I was never able to fully understand, but I know what it cost you. The estate should have been yours a long time ago. I cannot give you back the 31 years. I cannot give you back the classroom. I cannot repair what Maxine and you have lost, though I hope, and I've told her in a letter she will receive today separately, that she will find it in herself to understand. I am leaving you everything that's left of what I built, because I built it with 31 years of borrowed time. You bought that time. I spent it. The least I can do now is return what remains. I am sorry, Evelyn. I am more sorry than I know how to say in a letter, but I am trying. Robert. Ashworth set the pages down. The room was very still. I was looking at my coffee cup. The coffee had gone cold without my noticing. Maxine said, I didn't know. Her voice was different. The business had gone out of it entirely. I didn't know any of that, she said. I looked up at her. She was looking at me the way she hadn't looked at me, and I couldn't calculate it. Too many years. He told me you'd handled the accounts, she said. He said you made mistakes. He never said she put one hand flat on the table like she needed to feel something solid. He never told me it wasn't yours. I know, I said. Why didn't you tell me? I thought about how to answer that. I'd had 31 years to prepare an answer, and I still didn't have a clean one. You were 9, I said, and then you weren't 9 anymore, but by then it was the truth you'd grown up with, and I didn't know how to take it from you without taking something else too. Something about your father that you needed. I didn't need a lie. No, I said. You didn't. I'm sorry I let it go so long. Her husband had moved his chair back slightly, the way people do when they understand they're not part of what's happening. That was decent of him, I thought. I revised my opinion of him slightly. Maxine looked out the window. The city was bright out there, the fog having burned off some time while we'd been sitting in this room. I have to think about a lot of things, she said finally. I know, I said. I said terrible things to you. You believed what you'd been told. I should have asked more questions. I knew something was wrong. I knew the story didn't add up in places, and She pressed her fingers against her eyes. I chose the easier version. I wanted to reach across the table. I didn't yet. It wasn't time for that quite yet, and we both knew it. Some things have to be said before they can be held. Your father wasn't a bad man, I said. He did a bad thing. He did several bad things, and then he spent a long time not being able to look at them, and then apparently he did. I paused. That's something. It's not enough. No, I said. It's not. Ashworth walked me through the basics of the estate transfer over the following hour. I retained my own lawyer, a woman my sister recommended, who turned out to be sharp and thorough and exactly what I needed. The transfer took several months to complete, as these things do, and I will not pretend it was simple or that there weren't complications. There were. There are always complications when a person dies with that much behind them. But I want to tell you about the Tuesday 3 weeks after the reading, because that's the part that matters to me most when I think back on it now. Maxine called. Just called on a regular Tuesday morning the way she used to when she was in her 20s, and we still talked. I was in my kitchen making oatmeal. The phone rang and her name came up, and I stood there for a moment before I answered. I want to have lunch, she said, if that's okay. That's okay, I said. We went to a place in Coal Valley, her suggestion, a restaurant I'd never been to, small and warm with good light to the front windows. We sat across from each other and ordered, and for the first 10 minutes, we talked about nothing important. The weather, a movie she'd seen, whether I'd been following the construction on the Embarcadero, old habits, the grooves of how we used to be. Then she said, I've been thinking about what I missed. All of it? I asked. Pieces of it. I keep thinking about your birthday, the one where I didn't come. I said I was busy, but I wasn't. She looked at her water glass. There were a few of those. There were, I said. I'm not going to try to make them up to you all at once, she said. I think that would be too much for both of us. I agree, I said. But I want to try, she said. Actually try, if you're willing. I thought about the strawberry magnet. The fruit-shaped magnets on the refrigerator and the drawings underneath them, and the 9-year-old who made them, who had grown up into this woman sitting across from me, who had grown up with a hole in the story where her mother should have been. I had let that happen. Not alone, but I had let it. I'm willing, I said. The food came. We ate. She laughed at something I said. A small laugh, surprised out of her, and it sounded so much like the way she used to laugh when she was small that I had to look out the window for a moment. Just for a moment, and then I looked back. People ask me sometimes, neighbors mostly, or my sister when she visits, what I'm going to do with it all. The properties, the holdings, the number and the accounts that I still, more than a year later, haven't fully internalized. I tell them the truth, which is that I'm still figuring it out. I have set up a scholarship at the school where I used to teach before. Second and third grade teachers who show exceptional commitment to kids who need extra attention. I named it something quiet. Not after me. Not after Robert. Just after the school itself. I didn't want a plaque with my name on it. I just wanted someone, somewhere, to be able to stay in a classroom. I still do bookkeeping for one of my small businesses. I kept that one. The owner, a woman who runs a Vietnamese bakery out in the avenues, makes a sesame ball I have been eating every Saturday morning for 11 years. I'm not giving that up. And on the first Tuesday of every month, I go to lunch with my daughter. We are not where we were. We are not back to what we were before something became broken, because you don't go back. You can only go forward and build something that accommodates the break, holds it, makes room for it. That's what we're doing, slowly, with bad days still and phone calls that end too quickly and silences that carry weight. But also with good days, more of those lately. I'm 63 now. I spent 31 years carrying something heavy in a way that shaped me so thoroughly I sometimes can't tell the carrying from myself. I don't know how to put it down entirely, but I'm learning, I think, what it feels like to set part of it on the table and leave the room and come back and find it still there, just an object now, just a thing that happened. Robert gave me back what he could at the end. I used to think that wasn't enough, and maybe it isn't, but it was something I have today, and today, it turns out, is more than I expected. I think about the strawberry magnet sometimes, the little plastic one with the green leaf at the top, stuck to a refrigerator in a house I haven't lived in for almost 30 years. It's a strange thing to carry. Not the big moments, not the courtroom, not the morning I signed my name to something that wasn't mine to sign. Just that magnet. Just the way the kitchen light hummed while my life rearranged itself around me. What I've come to understand, slowly and not without resistance, is that every choice sends something forward in time, not as punishment. I don't believe the world works that way, like a ledger balancing itself in some cosmic back office, but as consequence. Robert made a choice in 1993, and that choice traveled with him for 31 years, growing heavier with every year he didn't address it. I made a choice too, to carry what he asked me to carry, and then to keep carrying it long after I could have put it down. Those choices shaped everything that came after. Maxine's distance, my empty classroom. The Tuesday mornings I spent alone instead of with my daughter. What I did, taking that plea, protecting a man who had not yet earned that protection. I used to call it love, and some of it was. But some of it was also something quieter and less flattering, an inability to let the hard thing happen, a need to hold the shape of the family together even when the family had already broken. That's not wisdom. That's fear wearing the coat of devotion. I know the difference now, though knowing it now doesn't undo the years it costs me. The thing that stayed with me about Robert's letter, the part I've turned over the most, was that he eventually looked directly at what he had done. Not to me only, but to Maxine. He had fed her a version of her mother that was easier for him to live with. And then he had to decide, at the end of his life, whether to let that version stand. He chose not to. That took something from him, I think. A particular kind of courage that isn't about grand gestures. It's about sitting down and writing the 11th draft of the letter you've been too afraid to finish. Maxine and I are not the same as we were. We are something new, which is the only honest way to say it. She is learning to see me outside the story she was given, and I am learning to let her, which requires its own kind of patience. A willingness to sit with the discomfort of being known differently than you were for a long time. If I could give anything to someone starting over from a broken place, it would be this. Do not confuse endurance with acceptance. I endured for 31 years. I accepted for maybe the last 2. Endurance keeps you alive. Acceptance is what lets you actually live. And do not wait for the sealed envelope, for someone else's deathbed clarity to tell the truth that only you can tell. The truth belongs to you. Waiting for someone else to speak it on your behalf is its own kind of loss. I have today. I have Tuesday lunches and sesame balls on Saturday mornings and a scholarship that doesn't have my name on it but has something better, my intention in it. That's enough. It turns out that enough, when you finally let it be enough, is quite a lot.